Level 4 project management. Here we are. Yesterday we were talking about deviation, right? Deviating from a project plan, which could be perhaps as a result of unforeseen circumstances or whatever. There are certain things, as we said, that can occasion deviations or that can orchestrate, if you will, deviation from the project plan. So today we are going to talk about the tools used to manage a project scope. Right. Like I said, project scope is very important. Right. A project scope tells you what needs to be done in the project, which we simply refers to as inclusions, right? And then exclusions, right? So remember, during the planning stage of a project, the scope is used to prepare the budget, to establish the budget, right? Okay. Now, during the implementation of the project, there could be certain things, perhaps like we said, deviation, that can make one to deviate from the original project plan or from the scope. So, in this type of scenario, we need to ensure that we don't deviate too much, right? Because if you deviate too much, and any attempt or attempted attempt for you to deviate is gonna affect the cost of the project. Obviously, it will affect the time as well. So it got implications. Any slight deviation must be controlled, right? In order not to deviate much from the original plan. So these are the tools used to manage the project scope. Project charter, the kind of a document of the project which contains things that are very important in the project, right? It contains all the things that needs to be done, stakeholders and everything it contains in the project chapter. Then we have the change request register, whereby you record, you document whatever changes that are coming up or that cropped up during the project, right? Yeah, we call it change request. For example, how does change request comes into play? Let's say we are all working on a project. Excuse. I'm the project manager, right? You are the team members. During the execution of the project, remember we are all working according to the scope of the project. If perhaps you discover something that needs to be changed from what it was originally based on the project plan, then you can request for a change. And there is a formality that one needs to follow in order to be able to effect that. We got what we call change request form. There is a template that we call change request form, right? So what happens there is this, or what are the things that you can write in the change request form? Then the form is designed in such a way that to collect information like you are the one that is making the request for a change, where you need to put your name and whatever, the type of project, then whatever change that you are proposing, you need to put it there, right? If there is an alternative that needs to be looked at, it need to be written in the change request form. Then the cost of whatever that you are requesting, whatever change that you are requesting, let's put it that way, needs to be reflected because one needs to do a kind of a feasibility analysis to see the cost of what you are requesting for to be effected as well as the benefit against the benefits, right? And then it needs to be signed off. So there's a template that contains all that I think I think if we've done something, I'll show you something like that. But if not, I'm going to show you in due course. I will show it to you how it works and how to complete such a request form. But here we're talking about the register where you need to document whatever request that have been made. Request this time around, I mean the change request. Then the project charter is a document. I'm trying to explain now in detail what is contained in the project charter. It's a document which formally recognizes and authorizes a project. So it acts as a basis for term of reference, project missions, and you got a project proposal and all those type of stuff. So then it authorizes the project. It's a document, as we said, that is used to authorize the project. So it has also the project scope statement, which states the works that needs to be done, as well as the project plan in terms of how the work need to be conducted in the project. So then let's talk about the scope management or the scope change control system. Like I said, changes are bound to occur in a project, but the question is, how do you manage it? Do you understand? Like I said, if eventually you having a lot of changes coming forth during the execution of the project or during the implementation of the project, it might end up in such a situation that the original outcomes or the predetermined, the predetermined outcome of the project can be jeopardized, can be compromised if you don't control the various changes, right? You need to control it. So scope management, that is what we refer to as the scope management or scope change control system. There should be a change request submitted, like I said, I explained earlier. So change request needs to be formalized and logged, right? And the project manager must decide if investigation is required. So such investigation can take place and the recommendation made based on what you've requested, right? The change is that you requested. If there is any need to investigate it, the project manager must investigate to establish the authenticity or the validity of such claims. So, yeah. Then they must decide on whose authority to make the change. So if the change is approved or whatever, it needs to be incorporated into the project charter and the project plan. Right. Then a change request form. This is exactly in terms of the descriptive aspect, how it looks like, right? It must have a request title. The title, like I said, then it must have, okay, for example, the change request title could be to replace window B with uh, window A of, okay, let me rephrase it again so that you can be able to understand it properly. For example, let's say the window B, right, or window A was previously steel window, right? Then you now want that steel window to be replaced with an aluminum window. Then you can say replacement of window B, aluminum steel window to aluminum window, something of that nature, right? So you can use that as a title so that once somebody see it, you know, in a glance, somebody can be able to know exactly what such a request form is all about, or such a change request form is all about, if you will. Then the originator's name, who is suggesting the change. If it is you, your name must be there, right? We need to know the source, right? So the originator's contact details must be there. The description of the proposed change must be there, like I explained to you. You need to describe it. Besides the title, you need to describe it in detail. And reason for the change. Why are you suggesting such change? And possible benefit of the change. They want to know the change, the benefits that could be derived. Possibly you can include the costs as well, so that one can be able to analyze it in form of uh, trying to establish or in trying to establish the cost versus the benefit. Perhaps if you discover that the cost is more than the benefit or the cost outweighs the benefit, there will be no point to do it, right? Right. If you decide to do it, unless it's something that one discover that or one discover it to be such pivotal, to the project or in the project that can make one to execute it. Otherwise, it would be something that is going to be uh, add cost to the project rather than bringing in a commensurate benefit. Then the urgency of the change needs to be captured as well. If it is something that needs to be done urgently, for example, if that task or the task that you are suggesting to be done as a new task that were not previously predetermined or part of the project plan, if it is something that is urgent that needs to be done quickly, then you say it, right? From there, one can be able to establish the urgency of it, of the change request. So, step to follow to develop a scope management system. What do we mean by a scope management system in the real sense of it, right? It means a system in place to be able to manage changes that may come forth during the execution of a project or during the implementation of a project, right? A kind of system mechanism put in place to manage project changes or scope changes, if you will. Does it make sense to you? Yeah. So you put that mechanism in place to be able to manage, right? Scope changes that may come forth during the implementation of a project. Remember, we're going to have scope register and all those kind of stuff, right? Then these are the steps to follow. Step one, develop a change control system that outline steps to follow, which must be detailed out with clarity, define purpose. Then there must be step two, make list of people who have the authority to make change. You mustn't make everybody, all are sundry, every dick and harry, you know, to make change in a project. There should be specific people. Because if you say everybody can make or suggest any change or a change in a project, you see, so at the end of the day, you will end up, you know, diluting or compromising the original or the predetermined outcome of the project. So you must designate specific people with authority, give them the authority to suggest a change in the project. So make a list of people that you've designated who can have the authority to make the change. Then you develop M&E. M&E means monitoring and evaluation. It has to be monitored and evaluated as well, right? In terms of the monitoring means observing the situation, right? You observe the situation and see whether it's working, right? So if it is not working, based on what you plan, then you need to control it, right? And at the end of the day, you need to evaluate your system that have been put in place, which in this case refers to the scope management system, and see whether it worked according to plan. So if it's worked or it's working according to plan, then you raise a thumb up for yourself and you can replicate it for another project. Or in case you come across another project, it can be replicated to execute other similar projects. So if the system in place is not working, you need to revise it. Look for where specifically the areas that are not working, then you revise it. You know, so that is what the need to develop M&E, monitoring and evaluation. Then you need to make sure the system of or there is a system of automatic approval is in place for emergency. Like we said, It shouldn't be a situation whereby everybody can suggest a change or can request for a change. Specific people must be designated to do that. And you need to have a list of such people. Right. But there's a clause here. In case of emergency, right, there should be a system in place to automate it, automate the approval. Do you understand what I mean? There should be a system in place to automate approval in place of emergency. You see, because in time of emergency, remember, when you raise a scope change request, right? It has to pass through the normal protocol for an approval. It takes time. You see, for example, you've seen a change, right? You completed the necessary template, the requisite template, then you submitted it to the project manager. The project manager will take time to look at it. You see, most especially if it is a big project, it's gonna take much more longer time. But if such change is urgent, right, that you need to effect in time of emergency, what is going to happen is that it will, if it is not done, it's going to affect the project. So there should be a system as well in place to automate such approval when it is under emergency condition. Does it make sense to you? Then step 5, you keep record of approved changes or all changes that have been approved. You need to keep a record as well, because at the end of the project, you need to reconcile it. Like I said, is going to have impact on the final outcomes of the project, even on the cost. It can perhaps impact on the schedule, the time, the duration of the project. So it must be, uh, there must be record. You need to document all the approved changes for audit purpose or for evaluation purpose. Does it make sense to you? Right. So we are going to, this is the end of topic 2, right? Yeah, this is the end of topic 2. So what is the time now? I don't know whether we can start topic 3. What is the time? Yeah. Huh? How many minutes left? Huh? No, for this period to end. It's supposed to end at what time? 20 past. 40. So we still have 20 minutes. Okay, let's go. Great. I'm loving it. Okay, now we're gonna go to the other topic. So I will take this stop here.